Welcome back, my friends. Last time we left off with James and Diep talking late into the night, hoping that Mr. Hoan's apology would finally come and heal their family. This continues my own take on what might happen next in their journey. You remember that sunny afternoon I mentioned? Well, it happens 3 days later. James is in the garden with Nee, teaching her how to plant vegetables. Diep is inside, preparing lunch. The house is filled with that peaceful quiet that comes with simple living. Then they hear footsteps. James looks up. It's his father. Mr. Hoan is walking toward the house, and in his hands, he's carrying something. A small gift box, wrapped simply. Not expensive wrapping, just plain paper, but it's the gesture that matters. James stands up, brushing dirt from his hands. "Dad?" he says, surprised. Mr. Hoan nods at his son. Then his eyes move to the house. "Is Diep home?" he asks quietly. James feels his heart speed up. This is it. The moment they've been waiting for. "Yes, she's inside. Come in, Dad." Mr. Hoan hesitates at the doorway. After all these years of rejection, walking into their home feels like crossing a bridge he burned long ago. But he takes a breath and steps inside. Diep is at the stove when she hears voices. She turns and sees Mr. Hoan standing there, gift in hand, looking more humble than she's ever seen him. For a moment, nobody speaks. Little Nee runs in, stops when she sees the old man. She's heard about her grandfather, but this is only the second time meeting him. "Diep," Mr. Hoan says, and his voice cracks a little. "May I speak with you?" James gently guides Nee to her room to play. This moment belongs to Diep and his father. Diep wipes her hands on her apron and nods. "Please, sit down." They sit at the small kitchen table, the same table where James cooks breakfast every morning, where Nee does her homework, where this family lives their simple, beautiful life. Mr. Hoan places the gift on the table between them. Here's what I find beautiful about this moment. Mr. Hoan doesn't make excuses. He doesn't try to explain away his behavior. He just looks at Diep and says what needs to be said. "I'm sorry." 2 words. But they carry the weight of years. "I'm sorry for not accepting you, for not seeing what James saw, for making you feel like you weren't enough. You were always enough. I was the one who wasn't enough. I wasn't a good enough father to see past my own pride." Diep's eyes fill with tears. She's imagined this moment so many times. Sometimes she imagined herself angry, listing all the hurt. Sometimes she imagined herself cold, making him feel what she felt. But now that it's here, all she feels is relief. "I brought you something small," Mr. Hoan continues, pushing the gift toward her. "It's not much. It belonged to James's mother. She would have loved you. She would have been proud to call you daughter." Diep opens the box with shaking hands. Inside is a simple jade bracelet. Nothing fancy, but jade means something. It means family. It means blessing. It means acceptance. "This was hers?" Diep asks softly. Mr. Hoan nods. "She wore it every day. I want you to have it. I want you to know that you are family. You always were. I was just too stubborn to see it." That's when James comes back into the room. He sees his wife crying, his father crying, and the bracelet on the table. He understands immediately what's happening. The wall is coming down. Not with drama, not with grand gestures, just with simple truth and honest tears. But here's what surprised me about what happens next. Last we saw, Mr. Hoan had just given Diep his late wife's jade bracelet, a symbol of acceptance, of family. But the healing was just beginning. Diep stands up, walks around the table, and does something that takes everyone's breath away. She hugs Mr. Hoan, this man who rejected her, who made her life difficult, who questioned her worth. She hugs him. "Thank you," she whispers. "Thank you for coming. Thank you for saying this." Mr. Hoan hugs her back, and his shoulders shake. He's crying. This proud man who never showed emotion, who built a company from nothing, who always had to be strong, he's crying in his daughter-in-law's kitchen. James watches his wife and his father, and he feels something shift in his chest. It's like he's been holding his breath for years, and now he can finally exhale. This is what he wanted. Not for his father to admit James was right. Not for his father to apologize to him, but for his father to see Diep the way James sees her. As someone worthy of love, of respect, of family. When they finally pull apart, Diep wipes her eyes and laughs a little. "I was making lunch. Will you stay and eat with us?" This time, Mr. Hoan doesn't say, "Maybe another time." He nods. "I would like that very much." Diep calls Ni out from her room. "Come meet your grandfather properly." Ni comes out shyly. She's a smart child. She knows there's been distance between her father and this man. But now she sees everyone smiling, crying happy tears. What I love about this moment is watching Mr. Hoan meet his granddaughter with open eyes. Not as a mistake, not as evidence of his son's bad choice, but as his granddaughter, his family. "Hello, Ni," he says softly. "I'm your grandfather. I'm sorry I haven't been around, but I'd like to be now, if that's okay with you." Ni looks at her mother, who nods encouragingly. Then she looks at her father, who's smiling. "Okay," Ni says simply. "Children are like that. They forgive so easily. Lunch is simple. Rice, stir-fried vegetables, the fish sauce Diep makes herself. Nothing fancy. But it's the best meal Mr. Hoan has had in months. Because it's not just food, it's communion, it's family." James watches his father eat the food his wife prepared, in their small house, at their small table, and he realizes something. His father has been lonely. All that pride, all that stubbornness, it left him alone in his big house with his failing company and no one to share meals with. "This is delicious," Mr. Hoan says. Diep smiles. "It's nothing special, just what we eat every day." "It's special," Mr. Hoan insists. "It's made with love. I can taste it." They talk during lunch. Carefully at first, then more freely. Mr. Hoan asks about Ni's school, about Diep's work, about their life. He listens like he's making up for all the years he didn't listen. And James sees his father differently now. Not as the man who rejected him, but as a man who made mistakes and is trying to fix them. After lunch, Ni asks if grandfather can read her a story. Mr. Hoan looks surprised, then touched. "I would love to." They go to Ni's small room and he reads to her. His voice is rusty at first. When was the last time he read to a child? But Ni doesn't mind. She leans against him and he wraps one arm around her, holding the book with the other. James and Diep stand in the doorway watching. This is what healing looks like. Not perfect, not without awkwardness, but real. Later, when Ni falls asleep for her afternoon nap, the three adults sit in the small living room. That's when Mr. Hoan brings up the subject they've all been avoiding. "About the company," he starts. James shakes his head. "We don't have to talk about that now, Dad." But Mr. Hoan insists. "No, I need to tell you both. I made some decisions." And here's what nobody saw coming. Mr. Hoan tells them he's not selling the houses. Not yet. Because that morning, before coming here, he got a phone call. One of his old business contacts, someone who owed Mr. Hoan a favor from years ago, heard about the trouble. This man runs a construction company. He needs wood. A lot of wood. and he's willing to buy from Mr. Hoan at a fair price. Not the desperate fire sale price, a real price. It's not everything, Mr. Hoan says, but it's a start. It could save the wood company at least. Now here's where the story deepens even more. The phone call that morning wasn't just about business. It was about reputation, about the relationships Mr. Hoan built over 30 years. The kind of relationships you can't buy. The kind that come from being honest, from paying your workers, from doing right even when it's hard. Why didn't he help before? James asks. Mr. Hoan smiles sadly. He didn't know. I was too proud to ask. But someone told him. Maybe one of the workers. I don't know. He called and said he heard I was in trouble. See that? That's what I mean about pride. It almost cost Mr. Hoan everything. His company, his houses, his relationship with his son. But now, as he sits in this small house with his family, he's learning. Pride is expensive. Love is what matters. So what does this mean? Diep asks. Mr. Hoan explains. The wood contract will bring in about $2 billion over the next 6 months, combined with James's offer of $1.2 billion. And if Mr. Hoan sells some equipment and tightens everything else, he might not have to close the company. He might survive this. But I need help, Mr. Hoan says, looking at James. I need someone I can trust to manage things. Someone who knows the business, someone who won't cheat me. The words hang in the air. James knows what his father is asking. Come back. Help rebuild. Be partners again, but different this time. Equal. Respected. I don't expect you to work for free, Mr. Hoan adds quickly. I'll pay you properly. And Diep, he turns to her. I know your work. I know you have your own life. I'm not asking James to abandon you. I'm asking if we can find a way to do this together, as a family. James looks at Diep. This decision isn't his alone anymore. They're partners. They decide together. Diep is quiet for a moment, thinking. Then she speaks, and her wisdom shows. How much time would it take? She asks practically. Mr. Hoan thinks. Maybe 3 days a week, just to oversee things, train some good people, get the systems working again, maybe 6 months to a year. James adds, I can keep my consulting clients on the other days. We'd still have income. Diep nods slowly. Then I think you should do it. Not for the money. Not even to save the company. But because he's your father. And because Ni should see that families help each other when times are hard. There it is again. That grace. That wisdom. She's not thinking about old hurts. She's thinking about the future. About the lesson for their daughter. About building something better. Mr. Hoan's face crumples a little. Thank you, he says to Diep. Thank you for being better than I deserve. Diep reaches across and touches his hand. We all deserve second chances. That's what love means. James makes the decision. Okay, Dad, I'll help. 3 days a week. But things have to be different this time. You have to trust me to make decisions. And I need to be home for dinner. Family dinner, every night. That's non-negotiable. This is the part that gives me hope about their journey. Because this isn't just about saving a company, it's about rebuilding trust. It's about Mr. Hoan learning that success isn't just money in the bank. It's the people around your table. It's your granddaughter falling asleep against your shoulder. It's your daughter-in-law forgiving you, even when she doesn't have to. They talk for another hour, making plans, discussing strategy, but also talking about life, about Ni's upcoming school performance, about Diep's work helping other families, about the vegetables growing in the garden. This is what family sounds like. Not perfect harmony, but real voices, real laughter, real connection. As the sun starts to set, Mr. Hoan prepares to leave. But before he does, he asks one more thing. Can I come back? Not for business, just to visit, to spend time with Nai. To be a grandfather. James and Diep answer together. Yes. Mr. Hoan walks to the door, then turns back. I wasted so much time, he says quietly. Being right, being proud. I almost lost everything that matters. James puts a hand on his father's shoulder. You didn't lose it, Dad. You found it. That's what counts. And what I believe comes next will be the most beautiful moment of all. Because now that the family is healing, now that Mr. Hoan has learned what really matters, there's one more bridge to build. James mentioned his brother, Hung, the other son who left, the one Mr. Hoan hasn't talked to. And bringing everyone back together, healing that wound too, that's going to take everything this family has learned and test whether love really is stronger than pride.